Welcome to those of you who are just joining us. We'll be getting started at the top of the hour, whatever time zone you're in, with our panel today, How CIRTL Impacted My Career, hearing from academic and research staff. As we wait for more people to join us, I'll give my usual CIRTL Network spiel. My name's Kate Diamond. I work with the CIRTL Network. I help coordinate all of our cross-network, all of this online programming that we do. And it's wonderful to see how many people are in the room joining us today. I'm sure we'll have more people joining over the first 5 to 10 minutes. If you're coming to this panel, I'm guessing you have some degree of familiarity with CIRTL, since this really is a CIRTL specific event. But if you're new and just starting to learn about who we are the Center for the Integration of Research, Teaching, and Learning. We're a network of 42 universities in the US and Canada, working to improve how the sciences are taught, and in doing so, help make the scientific community more diverse. Obviously, the image that kids have of a white guy in a lab coat is long outdated, and we hope that our work to advance equitable, inclusive, evidence-based teaching practices can only help advance a greater diversity of success in the sciences. We are just about at the top of the hour. I'm going to let our host for the day, Rob Linsenmeier, pick up whenever you're ready. In the meantime, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window if you like. And we'll have plenty of time for discussion and Q&A throughout the session today.
Yes, hi everybody. So last year we started this tradition, what I hope will be a tradition, of CIRTL alumni, that is people who have been through CIRTL teaching development programs, coming back and offering their feedback and advice maybe about the careers that they've gone into after having a CIRTL background. And this first panel are all alumni, and they are in academia, but not in teaching or faculty positions. And so we thought you would be interested in hearing what those kinds of jobs are like, and how their CIRTL background actually influenced them. So we have a new logo, the CIRTL Alumni Network, which as CIRTL participants, you are actually entitled to join. I will find the link for that and put it in the chat later. If we want to get the CIRTL alumni to interact with each other and continue their professional development after their CIRTL days are actually over. And so we have a new logo and we have a new website. The CIRTL alumni logo has the same colors as the CIRTL logo, but represents people around the world, possibly. So our panelists today are Lenny Ramsey, who's in research, but not as a faculty member. Liza Chang, who is director of first-year programs at the University of Wisconsin, and Preston Cumming, who is in the teaching center at the University of Colorado, Boulder. So what I'd like the panelists to do is each just introduce yourselves briefly and tell us about what your job is actually like and where you came from in terms of your CIRTL background, and we'll go from there. So Lenny, do you want to start off?
Sure. So yeah, I'm Lenny. I am the NSF Advanced Grant Project Manager at the University of Arkansas. NSF Advanced is a grant that has been given to multiple institutions, and the University of Arkansas got one last year. It is really focused on increasing and supporting women and women of color faculty within STEM fields. And so as the grant project manager, I'm really just in touch with all of the projects that we're running, and a lot of that has to do with faculty development. So focusing on the hiring as well as the retention and the promotion process for women faculty within all of our STEM fields. I got my PhD at Washington University in St. Louis. I was there from 2010 to 2016, and that's also where I became part of CIRTL.
Sorry, can you tell us a little bit more about what a project manager does in your context?
So for me, I got hired onto the program after the grant had been funded. So I did not have any hand in the actual designing of the projects, but I have a hand in implementation of all of our projects. And not all of them were completely, designed to a T. So it's kind of figuring out how we're actually going to implement them. One of our big projects that we've been working on a lot, for example, is our bridge program, in which we assign mentors to newly hired faculty. And I've been kind of instrumental in developing all of the supporting kind of programs and documents for the new faculty, as well as the mentors, as well as the chairs in the department, to kind of make sure that we support all of it. We do a workshop series in the fall semester, and then separate workshops for both faculty mentors as well as new faculty during both semesters. And we are working with departments that are in the process of hiring to make sure that we enroll everybody into our program. So I'm kind of working on that. We're currently starting up a leadership program for senior women faculty. So we have about 20 senior women faculty within the STEM departments enrolled in a four workshop series, in which we're going to have a panel with leaders on campus, and we're going to do some actual discussions on leadership strategies to kind of help support them in thinking about taking on leadership roles on campus. And we're working on best practices for hiring. So there's all these separate little projects, and I'm kind of overseeing all of them, because the people that actually wrote the grant are all faculty or deans on campus that don't necessarily have the bandwidth to stay on top of all of it. So I'm kind of running the show in that sense.
Right, great. Thanks very much. Liza, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Liza. I use she, her pronouns. And I am the first year program manager at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the College of Ag and Life Sciences. Excuse me. And let's see. So I've been in my position for about a year now. I did a panel about a year ago when I just started the position in May 2021. So almost a year in. Definitely still learning things, but at least have a little bit more experience under my belt, and have been able to see folks around me and what they're doing as well. My background, I did my PhD here at UW-Madison as well. And at the time, that's how I got involved in CIRTL. We have a Delta program here at UW-Madison, specifically focusing on teaching. And then I was also involved with the Wisconsin Institute for Science Education and Community Engagement, also known as WisScience, here on campus. And they focus more on like research mentoring as well as outreach and service. And so my experience with CIRTL as well as WisScience was focused around research mentoring as well as teaching. And did a postdoc with WisScience for a couple of years after my graduation, and then started my position here in CALS last May. A little more about my job. So my position is an academic staff position, but I do actually teach. I have a 0% instructor of record appointment, and I am specifically in the academic affairs office in our college. So it's kind of interesting because my job is a combination of teaching and working with first year students, as well as sort of being on the more academic affairs side, admin, supporting students in the background, whether it's things like Dean on Call or communications about their midterm grades, for example, things like that. So I teach some, our college has a first year seminar requirement. So I teach first year seminars. I also run an early start program for our incoming first year students in the summer. And there are lots of things that I don't do yet, but I hope to do in the future. My position is new. So some of it is sort of figuring out what it looks like as I go along.
How many first year students in your college are there?
Yeah, we have about 500 or so first year students. We're a smaller college at UW-Madison, which has its pros and cons.
Right, but that sounds like enough to keep you busy. Preston, you want to tell us about yourself?
I would love to, and just want to make sure I don't take up too much airspace, because I know this is an awesome experience, and thank you so much for having me. Preston Cumming, I got my PhD in 2013 here at the University of Colorado Boulder in geography. Went on to do a postdoc in botany and science communication at University of British Columbia in Vancouver, another CIRTL member. But they weren't part of CIRTL when I was there. Unfortunately, I could have kind of continued that assistance and support, kind of like what Lenny's talking about. Like, we don't all, get to continue some of this stuff. And so really happy to be here. I'm a what we call a lead, a professional development lead here at CU Boulder, which is a very vague term. But really my main role is graduate program coordinator here in our Center for Teaching and Learning in Boulder. I'm looking outside the beautiful snow today, and it's awesome. It's really cold, but it's awesome today. I'm super happy and get to live in a wonderful place. My job mostly entails coordinating and managing what we call our lead network, which is 52 to 54 graduate students in 46 different departments and colleges and schools across campus that are the liaisons for the Center for Teaching and Learning here to those departments in terms of teaching and learning. We work on individual projects in those departments. We work on workshops together. We work on coordinating efforts to improve graduate student teaching and postdoctoral fellow teaching, if there's any of those around. Most of our postdocs on our campus, of the 350 we have, are focused solely on research, but there is a handful that really love teaching too. And so I'm here for professional development kind of holistically. I run book clubs, I do workshops, I manage our certificate programs. We have a certificate in college teaching and a future faculty development certificate. I run our new digital badging programs. I do basically anything that I'm asked to do that works with graduate student development. As a graduate student myself, I was also a lead. I had the same role that I'm kind of working with now for 2 years. And during that time, I worked with a former program at CU Boulder called the Graduate Teacher Program, which was our CIRTL kind of head program at the time. And that's how I got involved with CIRTL back then. And that's how I was involved with CIRTL over the years until the last couple. And I don't know, newsflash to some, we will be rejoining CIRTL if at all possible this next year, which will be awesome to bring CIRTL back to the CU Boulder campus. And with that, so and my application's due on Monday, so I'm furiously writing that up right now. I'm looking at Kate and smiling. So thank you for all of that. But yeah, that's mostly my job right now. And when we're back in CIRTL, I will be also managing our CIRTL programming here on the CU Boulder campus, as well as our system campuses with CU Denver, the Anschutz Medical Campus, and CU Colorado Springs. So,
okay, great. Yeah, so Colorado was an early member of CIRTL, and they dropped out, I guess, really during the pandemic, and we're glad that they're going to come back. So the next question for each of you is, you know, you all came out of research universities, and probably when you got into those research universities as graduate students, you were thinking that you were going to do research as your career and possibly become a tenure line faculty member of someplace. So you didn't do those things. And I think the audience would be interested in hearing how your path developed to get you the kind of position that you have now, and you know what your experiences were in CIRTL that kind of led you to this. So let's go back to Lynn.
All right, so I'll try to keep it somewhat short. But I indeed went into grad school thinking that research was going to be everything that I was going to be doing. And for me, it took a few years, maybe 2 or 3 years in, when I reached a point where I was like, okay, I enjoy this, but I don't love it. I don't live and breathe doing the research. And I did really enjoy mentoring students. We had to TA a class, but that was kind of it. So it was all very minimal exposure to teaching. I got very lucky because I was a part of a program for international students. I'm originally from the Netherlands. And the director of the program came up to me and was like, I want to develop this course. Do you want to help me? And I was like, okay. And that's kind of what got me rolled into teaching. And I ended up teaching summer school, that course that we fully developed. I ended up teaching that for I think the last 3 years that I was there every summer. And I really loved it. And then kind of through that was like, okay, how can I develop my teaching? And that's kind of how I got involved with CIRTL. And so I really focused in on this kind of teaching and kind of shaping curriculum and that kind of stuff. And then actually got lucky once I graduated, because I actually did get a tenure track job straight out of grad school up in Wisconsin. And I was at a small liberal arts college, so I did some research, but it was heavily teaching focused, and I did really love it. I also, on the side, am a professional athlete, and I was trying to juggle training 20 to 30 hours a week with the tenure track job. And even though it was great, and I loved working with the students, and I actually am one of those people that loves being on committees. I loved being on committees and doing service work for the university. But kind of trying to juggle it all, I wasn't sure if I was going to make tenure, even though I was on track. I didn't feel comfortable, and it was just a lot to juggle. And when my wife got a job opportunity somewhere else, and since work was her full-time gig, and I was trying to juggle both of these things, I decided to leave the tenure track job and follow her, which is we moved to Houston and then left Houston for Arkansas. It took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to do from there, because I felt like I wasn't ready to go back onto the tenure track, but I really wanted to be in academia. I wanted to shape education. I loved working with faculty. I loved curriculum development. I loved working with students, but I wanted to do that in a way that I felt like I could make a difference. And that is how I ended up with the current position. I really love working with the faculty. I love being able to develop programs, workshops, and that kind of stuff. I feel like I have a little leg up over some of the other staff members because I do have experience. I have experienced what it was like to be a faculty member. So I kind of have an insight into that. But I get to do what I want to do, which is really focusing in on kind of like that DEI and faculty development side. So I get to work with faculty without actually being one right now.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks. Martha, go ahead.
Yeah, so I never actually wanted to be on the tenure track. When I went to grad school, I honestly probably didn't really know what I was doing and why I was doing it, except that I had a really great mentor in undergrad who encouraged me to do it and invited me to stay in his lab. During my grad school experience, I found that I really loved mentoring. As Lenny was saying, I really loved working with students. In the research lab, I did get a chance to TA and also enjoyed that. And I think it was really just that the student interactions, I realized, was like the part that I held on to the most and really motivated me. And so that led me to seeking out our CIRTL program and our Delta program here at UW and getting more experience in teaching. And then I started teaching a course that was focused more on is called like entering research on campus with science, and it's really more like, it's not as academic based, it's more thinking about building students' skills and breaking down or sort of like sharing with them the hidden curriculum of being in research. And I realized that this was something that I really loved. And a big thing about when I was working at WisScience, and one of their missions is really broadening access to research and STEM and higher education for students. And so I realized that that was really the direction that I wanted to go. I think, Lenny, there are a lot of similarities there. And so when I took my job, I knew it was going to be very student facing. I would still get to do the teaching in certain places. I'd still get to do mentoring. But also I saw the opportunity in the first year program manager position that I would get to impact a lot of students, like all of the first year students basically in our college. Hopefully I would be able to somehow reach out to them and connect with them, you know, some more than others. But and also with our early start program of getting students in the summer, even before their first year, and helping them to navigate the resources on campus and navigate higher ed. That was just something that I thought would be really impactful, especially for underrepresented students or students who just didn't have the same resources and support to figure that out on their own. And so that's sort of where I saw a lot of, what's the word? Potential in this position. And I'm still not there yet, but I think there's like a lot of room to grow here. And again, just that really student focused aspect of it, being in the academic affairs office and still getting to teach was a really nice combination in my position.
Everything that it's a 0% teaching commitment, but yeah, you find a way. And Preston, you even did a postdoc at a different university. So why aren't you a geographer?
Rob, I'm still a geographer. I published two things last year. So I'm still a geographer, but probably the same as Lenny and Liza. Like, I have to do that stuff on the side, right? I still love ecology. I'm still a botanist. I'm still like these things that I was trained to be forever. My undergrad, like I went to a very tiny school. Like my undergrad university, wasn't college, had 450 people, super small. But I dropped out of college 3 times and said, this is not for me. My father was a professor or a lifelong instructor. My mother's a teacher, my sisters are teacher, my whole family. I have grandparents that were ministers, so teachers in a way. There's this weird thing in my family where education really meant something. And I pushed back against that forever. I did not want to be a teacher. I did not like school. I was not good at school, I didn't think. But after going back to school after my 3rd time as a 23-year-old sophomore, something matured within my brain that said, hey, I like working with other people. I like being in this environment. I like helping my peers. I like doing these things. And that's when I decided, oh crap, I guess I'm a teacher. I guess this is what I want to be. And so from that point on, I would look at my advisors or my mentors or my professors and say, I want to have your job one day. And I swore that's what I was going to do. And so after taking a little bit of time before my master's, I went to the University of Montana for my master's degree in geography. I went there with the intent, I will be a professor one day. Unfortunately, like a lot of other things come up in my life. I ended up owning my own business and working in snowboard and skateboard shops and working in bakeries and cooking for other people and doing all these other things on the side. And that just kind of pushed me away from academia a little bit. But then at some point I realized I really love working with invasive species. I really love helping other people. I really want to I think research is my goal. And then I learned I'm not very good at it. I love being in the field. I love going out and collecting data. I love being around plants. I love analyzing things. I love doing everything. But to take that back to my office and sit in front of a computer and do code and push buttons. That was not what I wanted to be. And so in geography, now, unfortunately, in geography, if you don't love R, if you don't love Python, if you don't love GIS, like, you have a hard time being a physical geographer in that world. So I decided, yes, I want to be a geographer. This is what I want to do. And I want to do it at CU Boulder, which is one of the best geography departments in the world. And so I found that person. I found my mentor. I found Susan Beatty at the time, and I connected with her. But she said, I can't take you yet, because she was a dean. And so she could have one student at a time here and there. So I moved to Japan and taught English for a while with my now wife, my girlfriend at the time, and still fought for that. I finished my thesis, my master's thesis, from a couch in Utsunomiya, Tochigi, Japan. I defended on Skype, which was unheard of in 2005 or 6, whenever that was. And so, but I still fought for that. And I finally got in. I came here to CU Boulder, but not understanding what a research intensive kind of university really meant, and what they were here to do was to produce more PhDs that would go on to the professoriate and do these amazing things. And at some point I realized I really love teaching. I still love teaching. I taught, I was an instructor of record. I was a TA. I did everything I could. I got with the graduate teacher program, this predecessor I spoke about, and I learned about CIRTL through that. And I said, my research ability over here pushed me towards doing educational research too. And that's where my TAR project came in. That's where I got to go on a visit and go to Texas A&M and give a presentation, not only in biogeography, but also about my teaching. It was an awesome experience. And that's when I really started to think, like, I can do both. I can do this as an educator still. I don't have to just be a botanist or an ecologist over here. And so I had two faculty offers coming out of my PhD, and I turned them both down because they weren't places that my family wanted to be. By then I had 2 children. By the time I finished my PhD, it wasn't where I wanted to be. So I accepted this postdoc in botany, which isn't my field necessarily, but I became a botanist through this. It was kind of almost a hobby at the point, but I'm also a soil scientist. And so I got to use these skills, but I also got to work in this science communication program where I worked with with graduate students across the campus, which is exactly what I was doing with the graduate teacher program in CIRTL before, and really use those skills to like do workshops and do some sort of communication with these other scientists across campus. And through that, I had one more offer by the end, and it was at my alma mater. And that's a long story, and anybody ever wants to talk to me, just email me and I can talk about that too. But that didn't work out either. And so I wanted to come back to Boulder, and I wanted to continue to work with graduate students on being better teachers through that process. I'm a lecturer in geography. I'm also still a graduate student. I'm getting another master's degree, and I get to help other people do the best they can be the best they can be in their own science, and teach them that it's not plan B, it's plan 1A prime, right? Like we can do these other amazing things with these skills that we develop that isn't always being a faculty member, but to tell them that it's a reality and that there's options of you being able to translate the amazing things you learn through CIRTL, through your own graduate career, into just being the best you can be in whatever it is that is ahead of you, right? Whatever that path might be.
Yeah, okay, now nobody in the audience is going to want to be a tenure-line faculty member because of all the great things that you've shared. So my last question for you before we open it up for audience questions, and I hope there are some. I certainly could pursue any of these careers a little bit more, is I think you've told us what you like about your job and why it's great. Are there downsides that people should know about when they think, oh, I want to be a research administrator, or I want to be a first-year programs administrator or want to direct teaching and learning programs?
I mean, I can kind of start that off too. To me, I mean, I'm currently not teaching, and that is something that I do really miss. And that is something that maybe I'll be able to pick up once I really have this program kind of under control. And another downside is that I'm on a grant for 3 years. So after that, we'll probably, because of COVID, get a no-cost extension for another year, and they'll keep me on for that. After that, it's kind of figuring out where I'm going to go from there, basically. So I think those would be my main downsides. You know, it's just very different. I feel much more scattered in terms of I have like all these little different projects that I have going on. I'm not really focused, honed in on my own like project. I'm really much more working with other people, but that's actually what I really like. I love working with other people and feeling like I can make a difference to people, and both the people that I'm helping develop these programs and the people that I'm developing these programs for.
You've probably made a lot of connections there. So people will realize the kinds of things that you're good at. And, you know, I would think that somebody will want to keep you on.
I think so. We'll just have to see how that all pans out. But at this point, I'm not worried. I feel like,
Right.
I know the people there, and I think we're doing a lot of good work. So I think there will be a future of some sort.
Liza?
Yeah, this is not necessarily a downside of my position, but I think it's definitely a challenge. I think being in student academic affairs, there's a good side and a bad side, right? Like one, you really get to interface with students. You get to figure out what their challenges that they're running into are. And it is it is part of my job, and I get to spend my time and energy being able to support them and helping them figure out what resources we need to connect them to, what next steps they need to take to be successful. And I really enjoy doing that. And I think it's like really nice to have that be a part of my job description, so that it's not, sometimes when you're teaching and you're doing research and you're doing all these other things, it's sometimes hard to have that, bandwidth to be able to support students so fully. Not that you can't, but it's sort of an add-on, right? But like, I think the challenge is you see more students who are struggling, and especially when you get emotional, sorry, especially during, the last 2 years that we've had, it's been a lot. Like there have been a lot of things happening for students. It's sometimes hard to balance being able to take care of yourself as well as take care of your students. I apologize. And sometimes there's only so much you can do for students as well, and they also have to do their part. And so it does take sort of an emotional toll. But in the end, like knowing that you are there for students and knowing that you are there to help make a difference really helps me to pull through.
Yeah, thanks. Preston, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Thanks, Liza. You're gonna make me cry too. I think the biggest difficulty that in my role, at least that I've faced, I think in probably all three of our roles is, like Lenny said, like we're at will, right? We're on contracts, we're on yearly performance reviews, we're on these things that aren't necessarily the same as that tenure track kind of position. There's a little bit more confidence in those. If you get an assistant professor position at a research one university, they're bringing you there for a reason, right? They have confidence in you. It can be quite difficult those first 4 or 5, 6 years, but for us that aren't on that, the bureaucracy is very different on the staff side of things, and the at will and the soft money side of things. Like it just really changes the dynamic of how you work. The way that you're looked at sometimes is different. I could have a PhD with more publications than an assistant professor, but having an assistant professor stand next to me at an event and me as a staff member, like, shows that I mean something. My partner's in healthcare, and having an MD stand next to her as a master's only level person gives her credibility. So it's hard sometimes to fight for that credibility that we're all trying to like show that what I do matters and what we do matters. And just like Liza's saying, like, if we always just bring it back to student focus and we bring it back to the students, which is probably what we're all thinking about, even as a professor, right? That's my, I guess that's my punchline, whatever, like, all 40 other people in this space, like, think about that when you do go on to be faculty. Think how you can support staff and your undergrads and your students as best you can, even if you have a very intense research agenda and your lab is small and all these things. Think about that lecturer that's teaching 200, 400 student sections 4 times a day. So I think that's me. It's like the struggle that we kind of go through and trying to bring value to what it is that we're doing when we know we're doing the right thing.
Well, I think it's fair to say that different universities and even different departments value staff to different extents and support people in non-tenure line positions to different extents. And in some departments, it could be that you'll feel like you're really part of the group, and in other departments, you'll feel like you're a second-class citizen, even though your work is just as important and you're doing great things. So that's something to look for when you go to interview for positions like these. Ask people, how they feel they're supported. We have a question in the chat from Ashti. Do you want to unmute and ask the question?
Yeah, you guys kind of hit on this topic just now, but I guess adding on to that, like, about feeling valued and how your position fits in within the infrastructure of the university, are there ways that you or you've seen others advocate for the work that you're doing and the positions that you have that has made it easier to be this either at-will employee or, the work that all of you are doing is essential, but it doesn't fit the traditional narrative, and how have you navigated that?
I think for me, and this was apparent from the time that I interviewed, I think for me, a lot of the support has come from the team that actually applied for the grant. And I think, there are a lot of very strong women at the University of Arkansas, even though we're in Arkansas and it's, sometimes a little backwards. There is great support for our programming, especially from the core team. Our Dean of Engineering is a woman. The Vice Provost for Faculty Development is a woman. The Associate Dean in the Business School is a woman. So we have this really great and very powerful team that has put a lot of trust in me and will let me do whatever, basically, to support their programming, and they trust me to do it. So to me, that feels really good. From the rest of the university, it's a little hit or miss, right? We are trying to get a lot of buy-in from chairs and deans across the university, and a lot of them are white men. And that is it's a little bit harder to make it clear what we're trying to do and that it's actually necessary. It's not that they're not necessarily that they're against it or anything like that. It's more that they just don't see the need, right? And so we're really trying to get that across and making a push for that. And that's just going to take time and work. But that is something that going into this grant, I knew would be pushback. In terms of just as my position as a staff member, I feel like I've gotten a lot of respect for what we're trying to do and the things that I've done so far. So I don't necessarily feel like I'm, at a different position than anybody else.
I think for me in my position, I sort of have the academic affairs as my back. So I can, and I think one other thing that's important to note is that because I'm still in the first year, I haven't had to this isn't a side that I've had to deal with as much yet. Most of my work has been student facing up till now. I foresee that there's going to be more work working with faculty and staff within different departments within our college. At the moment, I think like a lot of that is actually, I'm getting to build a relationship of like, I'm supporting first year students. I'm going to invite you all to come to my course and actually like share with them your research, your department, and get you students so that we hopefully can start the relationship on that positive foot. And then hopefully when I come in later and we talk more about, you know, what do first year seminars look like? What do they really mean? And for your department, what does that mean? Hopefully that will be a bit of an easier conversation. But I think at the moment, a lot of it has been, I have had a really excellent woman supervisor who's an assistant dean in our college and in our office. And so she has really been the advocate for me and the work that I'm doing.
Super brief, because I don't want to take up any more space, but I didn't mean to say like I don't get support, I guess. I get huge support. I work in a center for teaching and learning, and the last 2 years, that has been vital on every campus, right? Anybody that has any issues in teaching the last couple of years, they come to us. We only started this CTL during the pandemic, so it's been very difficult. I'll also say that my identity, I'm a middle-aged white cis, like I embody what this university embodies in many ways. And so it's easy for me to step up. And so I think in some ways it's me trying to also be that person for other people. So, so thank you. Thanks for bringing those up. And I think, you know, this is we all get support in different ways. And my center definitely is behind me and everything that I do for graduate students, for sure.
Great, thanks for all the answers.
Yeah, I don't mean to, I mean, if you want to ask each other questions too, that's fine. But we do have one that was posted in the chat from, let's see, I think Rudy directed it to Kate. Rudy, do you want to ask it directly? Okay, I'll ask it. So maybe you can see it in the chat. What does work-life balance look like, and how do you think that is in your position? Does work end at a particular time, or do you have out-of-office commitments like faculty roles or jobs would?
I mean, for me, that is part of the reason that I ended up in this job and not on the tenure track right now. For me, when I get home, I'm generally done, right? I like to kind of, I do check my email and I'll answer emails and I'll do little things because I work with faculty that I know are like insanely busy. So I try to be there for them whenever they have anything that's needed. But I also get to go home and, you know, go do my workouts, or in the middle of the day, if I have, you know, I can take a longer lunch break and go for a run. On my weekends, I can take my weekend pretty much off. And for me, trying to balance, you know, training 25 to 30 hours a week, that makes such a huge difference. In that I feel like I have some form of balance in everything that I'm doing, and I actually can spend some time with my wife. To be fair, I'm lucky. Not lucky, but she has a really good job, but also travels a lot. She's generally out of town from Monday through Thursday, so kind of I can do all my stuff. And on the weekends, she does have to work. But when I go out for a bike ride for 6 or 7 hours, that's fine. But also, I don't have to worry about having to check my phone or doing anything for work. I don't have to think about any of that when I am out for 6 or 7 hours. And for me, that has been great. So yeah, for me, the work-life balance is definitely much more there now than I had when I was a faculty member. But I also think you can make it as busy as you want, right? Right now, I'm, for example, not teaching, and I could choose to teach, but I could add, which would add on to my load, right? And so I think you can make it as busy as you want, but it's more up to you at this point.
I think for me, again, being in that first year, it's a little bit of a steeper learning curve. And so there's just more going on that I have to learn the ropes of. I'll also say that this semester in particular is busier because I had a course added to my plate that was not in the plan originally. It's just that my background fit it really well and they needed an instructor. But I'll say generally in our office, so we actually have this academic affairs office has like open hours from 7:45 to 4:30. And I do see people come in 8:30 and they leave by 5. And a lot of the people in our office do have kids. And so, you know, it's not even that you have to necessarily be here during that whole time. Folks are pretty flexible about that. I think like the slight downside for folks, if you are looking for, you know, more remote work in this type of position, is that because it's so student facing, there is a lot of like, we have a requirement, for example, in our college and office that we can only have 1 day of remote work per week. The other thing about my position is that I sort of have to operate on student hours a little bit. So for example, if we're putting on an event, like, and we know that students have classes through 5 p.m., like I might have to hold it 5 to 7 or something like that. So there are like times outside of the work hours that I will have to do, but that means maybe I'll come in a little bit later that day or something like that to sort of make up for that. And yeah, I think like, I personally am just not very good at work-life balance. I've been improving, like I've been not taking work home with me. But it has been a little bit more challenging just in this first year, I would say, in particular.
Oh, Liza, you could work on that. And first I want to say, like, Lenny, I'm sorry, I had to Google you. If you want to come help me with my running, I would love to hire you as my coach. I'm still an aspiring runner and I'm not a swimmer, so the triathlon part, like, but we can work on that. And you keep bringing it up, so I'm like, I'm gonna go and figure out more about you. But work life, I was texting somebody like, what is that? I don't know what that work. It's because for me, I was trained to work all the time as a graduate student. And so therefore I now work with graduate students and I still have that mentality, and it's become it's really difficult to break out of that. And I commend Lenny to being able to do it somewhat. I commend Liza for thinking about it and trying, but I still haven't been able to get out of that, like, graduate student, I should be working at 2 a.m. kind of thing. And it's really, really hard for me as a student, as a teacher, all these things that come at us all the time, and still fit in time for you. I was told that by several people along the way: take care of yourself, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. And I still haven't figured that out. Work-life balance is very, very difficult for everyone. And many of us, whether we're working on contract or couple year or yearly rotation or whatever that is, like, I still feel like I have projects I need to do and I need to get them done. And if I need to be working at 10 o'clock at night, I need to be working at 10 o'clock at night. But I always told myself when I lived in Japan, like when I was teaching in a suit, I'll never wear a suit again. And then I said, I'll never work past 7 p.m. again, but it keeps coming up every once in a while. It ebbs and flows, just like it would with faculty life. There's good times, there's bad times. And I think we all still kind of run into that.
Francesca has a question that's not exactly about your current positions, but Francesca, do you want to ask that?
Yeah, sure, I'll ask it. So I wasn't sure it was necessarily aligned to this platform, but as a recent postdoc hire, and working in a field that is very different from my area of research and expertise, I am finding myself just trying to keep my head above water. And I wondered if you had any strategies or techniques that you can share with me about how to not become engulfed in self-doubt?
I can speak a little bit to this. It's not great advice. I'll couch that up front. But so what my postdoc was, my PhD was in neurobiology. And my postdoc was in educational research, which is very different. Now, here's why it's not good advice, is because my postdoc research was actually not my focus for my postdoc. At that time, I was already doing program coordination work and teaching. And so that was really the focus of my job. And my supervisors really said, like, prioritize that. We'll do the research sort of on the back end. And if you don't finish it, that's okay. It's more training in the skills of like coordination and program coordination and teaching. But I think I really had to, because it was so different, the types of research I was doing, I really had to step back and say, even though I have a PhD, like, I don't know anything about how to do research in this new field, and like admit that to myself, and then admit it to my mentors and say, I have transferable skills. I know that I will be able to learn this, but right now I know nothing. And so I need you to treat me as if I know nothing and help me to figure out how I find, the background literature on this, how to do the analysis, how to do these things. And that was really helpful. Like, they were really supportive in that, and they recognized that, this was not my field of expertise. And like, I think the first step, because there were a few weeks where I just wouldn't admit it to myself. I was like, I should be able to do this. Like, I have a PhD, I should be able to do this. And then I just like kept hitting a wall. And it was finally when I said, no, this is just not something I know how to do, but I can pick it up. And then sought help, that it became better.
I think that lots of times, especially in big labs, the PI is recruiting for people who bring something different than what the lab already has. And so you're not really expected to know everything. So I think, you should try to feel like you'll fit into some niche and bring them something else that they don't actually have right now. And you'll learn some of the other work on the way, but maybe not completely be able to switch your own career. Let's see.
I can talk about that real quick. Like, botany was a kind of easy transition for me. It wasn't that far off from what I did. And so different than what Liza's speaking about. And I actually have a postdoc in our medical campus that talks about this a lot, like super nervous, just feeling like the imposter syndrome in that world still exists. And I think like, I didn't feel like I belonged in this another research intensive university department, that like it made me feel kind of strange. But I had super supportive supervisors. The best supervisor I've ever had was there. And so there again, finding those people really can help you a lot and make you feel like you do have transferable skills. You do have, like, you still are a graduate student, like you can do these things regardless of what that field is.
There's another interesting question here, and we're going to possibly run out of time before we answer all the questions, but I think possibly Lenny and Preston and Liza would be willing to answer other questions in the future if you have. Yeah, they're all sort of nodding, not necessarily enthusiastically nodding, but that's okay. The thing that I thought was interesting, the question that I thought we should follow up on is the, when you read a job description for your job, did that match what you're actually doing, or not? And I think that answer might differ for different people.
I mean, just to be very honest here, like, I wasn't 100% sure what it was that I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do. And so once I kind of went through, like, saw the jobs that were kind of coming up, and this one, once I read it, I was like, oh, that could be interesting. I didn't really know what it meant. But I did apply for it, not thinking that I was qualified to do it. But then I got an interview and I got to talk with a bunch of members on the team, and I got a better feel for who I'd be working with and what I would be doing. And that's for me what solidified the fact that I really wanted the job. So for me, it was a bit more of a searching process and kind of more, ruling out what things were that I wasn't interested in than it was what it exactly was that I wanted to do.
For me, the job description actually, I looked at the job description, I said, I would be a great fit for this job, which I think doesn't happen very often. I just happened to get lucky. But I think like the job was really looking for program coordination. It was looking for teaching skills and curriculum development. And I happened to have training in all three of those. And one thing that really helped me one thing that helped me decide during the interviews was talking to everyone, as you said, Lenny, but actually they had students interview me. So they had a couple students in a program that I'm working with now interview me and talk to me. And that was the most fun part of my interview. And I just thought it said something that they were having the students interview and have a say in that process. So that was a really interesting part of my interview process.
I can't speak to this a whole lot. I have a very different path than most people. I'd already worked for this program. I needed a job. I asked the former director, do you have anything? Do you know anything? They said, I'll put you into this temporary kind of short-term position. And that has grown from a part-time, like 20-hour job where I got to hang out with my oldest son for as much as I could, which was awesome, into this. And so I don't, like many people, everything I've ever been able to do or job that I've had has been because of the people and the connections that I've made. And so this position grew into something in the former thing. I've been let go from this university 3 times. So there again, I've quit college 3 times. There's some things come in threes, which is kind of strange, but I was let go again, and we reorganized, and I didn't have a job and I had to reapply. So like Liza, I reapplied. The people on the search committee, I already knew them. Like I knew them very well. And so this kind of strange like thing, there is this serendipity kind of piece to this too, of like connecting with others. The alumni network. Thank you, Rob. Like the alumni network means something. Coming to these panels and meeting folks like us like means something, and this really does help. And it's a positive, can really make an impact on who you know. So I think it's a good thing for sure.
Thanks. I think so. Erica had a question about how do you get into positions like this, and I think our general answer for you is that you should do things other than research while you're a graduate student. Try to take advantage of all these opportunities to teach and learn to mentor and interact with more people outside of your lab if you can, and get to know the people in these kinds of research and teaching center positions, because they'll often have leads for you. There's also the CIRTL Network website also has a job board, and these are exactly the kinds of jobs that people will post on those boards. So you might not be able to land in one immediately, but getting to know people around the CIRTL network, having some CIRTL credential will make you more interesting to people in the CIRTL network. So that would be my answer. Anybody else want to add to that quickly?
Can I just say one quick thing, because it also relates to what Preston was saying of like the serendipity. I talk to people, like just ask them what their job is, because I think especially in academia, it's like there's so many positions out there and they're all so different. No one knows about them until you do them or you ask about them. And I I got a part-time job as well as my postdoc just from doing informational interviews and kind of being like, what do you do and how did you get there? And can I somehow be involved, even if it's through sort of volunteering a little bit of my time? And I think like making those connections are just, it's so critical. And now in my position, continuing to make those connections, I know that like if I were to switch to a different position, I know people in different units. I can learn a little bit more about what they're doing, what the people are like in their offices. And I think it's just, I hate the word networking, but it's really just getting to know people.
Right. Any other thoughts? We should, Erica, did you want to follow up on that?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thank you for your answer. Like, I kind of figured it is more about like reaching out to people, but right now it's been difficult because of COVID, of not seeing people as much in their offices. Like right now, I mean, there's cubicles in my office here because I'm getting my master's, but there's no one. I'm the only person in here. And that's just, COVID really has kind of hurt that of being able to make connections and being asking people like, why are you doing what you're doing? So that's why I asked that question. Yeah.
I think that goes along with like what Liza was just talking about. Like there's, and what I put in the chat, there's a lot of us out there that do things that aren't, and that goes back to another question earlier, maybe Raj asked that, like about fit. We all fit in higher education. Like we can make it work. We know how that kind of goes. And so look at people's backgrounds in some of these places. Find the people in undergraduate education, find the people in the centers for teaching and learning, find the people in STEM education, find those people in those departments that have degrees in some of these things, and be like, do some informational interviewing, just cold call. Like, you could totally do that. You could do that in the professoriate too. Like go find the people in the field and just talk to them. What'd you do? Look at their CVs, look at these things and figure out like how they navigate that. I mean, there's tons of people in CIRTL that are the institutional leaders or co-leaders that don't have degrees that necessarily you would think are STEM like specific, right? So say like also, how did they come back this way? How are they doing these things? Like it's great to just get to know people like that.
Okay, yeah, so we should wrap up. And next week at this time, we have a panel of people who are in teaching careers, but they're mainly teaching, not doing research. So that kind of position is out there also. And Kate, do you have anything to close us out?
Just a huge thanks to everyone for participating, for coming with very thoughtful questions, to all of our panelists for talking about what I always forget. This can be like an intense and heavy thing to talk about, like why you're doing a career that is, you know, outside of what people expect of people who like fit a mold. So thank you very much for talking about your experiences, for your openness. Next week's session, I just put a link to that in the chat window. I've also put a couple of reminders in the chat window to people to please fill out our evaluation. You should have it in your inbox too. Your feedback is totally anonymous. The evaluation is very quick and it is helpful to us, especially since this is the first of a 4-part series. And lastly, I just want to give a huge thanks to Rob Linsenmeier for all of your work organizing this. And I look forward to seeing as many folks as possible next Wednesday, same place, same time, new topic, new panel. Thanks all.